Distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends, good afternoon and good evening, depending on your time zone. Wherever you are, Fojiro Golair, welcome to UCD Japan Fair 2020. UCD Japan Fair 2020へようこそ. We would like to welcome you all to today's webinar, Seeing Japan Through the Journey of Umami and Washoku. This event is organized in collaboration with UCD Japanese Society, the Embassy of Japan in Ireland, Island Japan Association, Experience Japan, and the UCD Center for Japanese Studies, which was established in April this year. This lecture is the first event of a 2-month-long UCD Japan Fair for 2020. We'll be hosting interesting webinars coming up in November and early December, webinars about the power of music, the McGowan trilogy, and post-Abe political leadership in Japan and the world. And also the information session for students and researchers who are interested in and planning on going to Japan, either on the JET program or the JSPS fellowship schemes. But today's talk is a special treat, especially as Anna-san is delivering a talk about a very popular subject, which is Japanese food and washoku, live from Tokyo. And she gave a related talk in person in UCD before, and it really was a very popular talk. But one of the questions at the end of that talk last time was, where can we get some of the ingredients? So we reached out to our good friends, Asia Market, who have supported the Japanese festival called Experience Japan in the past. We thought you'd be interested in this.
Hi, I'm Eva from Asia Market. Welcome to our Ballymount store. We are Ireland's oldest and largest Asian food supermarket. We stock a huge range of products from all over Asia, of which Japanese products are one of the most popular. So for the purposes of today's talk, I'd like to highlight Ajinomoto's amazing range of Japanese gyoza. The most popular flavor is the chicken and vegetable, and they have many other flavors including pork, duck, prawn, vegetable, and their newest flavor that they've come out with is this chicken katsu curry, which is absolutely delicious, so definitely worth a try. So thank you very much for listening. If you like the look of all the products, we are open 7 days a week. We have retail stores in Dublin 2 in the city centre and Dublin 12 in Ballymount. You can also shop online with us at www.asiamarket.ie.
Looks very yummy. Now, it gives me a great pleasure to welcome our speaker, Dr. Ans San Gabriel. Dr. Ans San Gabriel is manager at the Public Communications Department at Ajinomoto Japan, a graduate of the Veterinary School of la Universidad Autonoma de Barcelona. Dr. San Gabriel has a master's in nutrition from the Pennsylvania State University. She joined the Institute of Life Science of Ajinomoto Company Incorporated, based in Kawasaki in 1997, and worked as a senior researcher there till 2010. Dr. San Gabriel's research interests include the study of the umami taste and the taste of other non-protein amino acids, the molecular mechanisms involved in their sensing, and their multiple functions of umami substances in food and the gastrointestinal tract. She is also a founding member of the Association of Spanish Scientists in Japan, ACE Japón, and Scientific Affairs representative of the non-profit organization Umami Information Center and the International Glutamate Information Service. She has been invited as a speaker to many international scientific conferences and special lectures about chemical sensing. So Anna-san will speak for 35-40 minutes, followed by short Q&As at the end. We'll collect, as Hugo-san already said, we'll collect your questions through the chat function on Zoom. So please write in if you have any questions throughout this webinar. I will try and accommodate as many questions as possible. Thank you very much. And now the virtual floor is yours. Over to you, Anna-san. Yoroshiku onegaishimasu.
Thank you very much for this kind introduction. I really want to thank you and Hugo as well for inviting me once more to this session, the UCD Japan Fair. It was such a nice experience last year, so I'm very happy to participate this year as well. So I will share my screen then. So welcome everyone, and I hope today I can explain you what is so special about Japanese food, and you get a feeling of maybe becoming a little bit more professionals about it. I would ask you a question. Have you ever thought about your own food culture? As I shown in this slides, you know, our national food or our national gastronomy, it's an expression of identity. And all of these national gastronomies or cuisines, they have essential characteristics that are very unique to one of them, to any of the national cuisines. And here you have pictures of different cuisines around the world. I put representative like an Irish meat dish, the typical Japanese washoku, and a French bread with cheese and grapes. So to give you an idea. So today I will talk a little bit about an overview of Japanese food. So why it became what it is today, what was important of Buddhism, and how Buddhism influenced on the development of umami in Japan. Umami and other civilization, how was born as a seasoning, a little bit of the beginning of the industrialization of foods, but just briefly, and then I hope to be able to describe in more detail what is the characteristics or properties of traditional Japanese diet. So how Japanese food has started, just to go to the beginning in the Yayoi period, it was thought that rice was introduced from maybe the southern of China or the Korean peninsula, and it was a short grain rice initially for really high, very warm weather, and after that it has been adapted to more temperate weathers, and the rice was used to accompany fish and meats and nuts and other foods, and it became the staple food of Japan. And as you may know, actually Japanese paid with taxes with rice for really long time during centuries. And then during the 6th century, Buddhism was introduced in Japan, and it became official with the Empress Suiko, and she herself became a nun before becoming an empress. And little by little, what this represented is that meat was not meat, and fish and all products derived by meats were banned and were not allowed to be eaten during this period. And the process of forbidden the eating meat increased over the time. So when the Emperor Tenmu, actually he forbid to use cattle and horse and dogs, monkeys and chickens. So and if any high class warrior or aristocrat will eat some meat, they were not allowed for 3 days, were not allowed to participate in Shinto rites during 3 days, because they considered that they were not clean. So this gave birth to the concept of Sojin cuisine, which is a very unique cuisine. We will learn more detail later on, but it's the problem is, if you don't have meat, how do you get all these flavors without using meats? And at the same time, everybody, if you ever have tried the monk's cuisine, this is a type of cuisine that is not bland, it's very tasty, but they use seasonings in a very controlled way and just enough to be able to bring up the natural flavors of foods. So these are the main Japanese seasonings that they are using. So vinegar, sweet rice wine, sake, sesame oil. These are the typical seasonings that you would use to bring up the taste of the Japanese cuisine. But why I want to concentrate or center in umami is because the only one that gives this meaty taste when you don't have meat is actually the umami taste, and that comes from dashi. And this is a conglomerate, or a mixture of all the ingredients that you will need to make a good dashi, or to bring up the umami flavor. And that's what we will learn today during the presentation. So is it umami just a Japanese concept, or was any other culture familiar with umami? Actually, umami is very ancient, and there are records that the ancient Greeks and Romans already knew about umami, but they did it in a different way. So they actually fermented the intestines of salted fish at the sun, and they made a liquid called liquamen. And after the process of this liquamen, they got this garum that they put in amphoras. So this picture shows you the ruins of garum factory in Valeo, actually in Spain, where they found a lot of amphoras that they were still filled with the ancient garum, already fossilized, but they have remaining of garum. And this is the ancient ancestor of the current fish sauces that are used in Southeast Asia for cooking a lot. These fish sauces have been lost in Western Europe, but they are still being used in Asia. The other reference we got is from from Brilliant Savaran. He was a gastronomist. He was a very cultured person who wrote a book, The Physiology of Taste, and there he describes osmazone, like the taste substances that give meats a delicious and savory taste. The problem is, so he's very close to the concept that after that was developed as umami, but he never described or never looked for what was responsible for this taste, or these taste substances that he was talking about when you reduce the meat sources over time for cooking French food. So at that time, during this period, at the end of the 18th century, Japan went through a very, very extreme change from Edo to the Meiji Restoration. Suddenly, the feudal Japan changed from from feudalism to a modern, to try to become a more modern nation and try to protect itself from the from other countries. And for that process, the samurai Shimazu clan was very decisive, because they supported the emperor as a new political system, and they were against the Tokugawa samurai system. And that meant also that there were different changes, so that Buddhism was not anymore the main, a very important part of society. Actually, there was a very strong anti-Buddhist sentiment. So people start eating meat again and introducing a lot of factors that were culturally related to the West. So they learned, they introduced, and they also went outside to study abroad. And among this period, there is this professor Kikunekeda that is going to be the main character of our story, and because he basically umami was born with Kikunekeda. So Professor Kikunekeda was also from the same clan of samurais. His father actually went to Kyoto to sell property that the family had to sell. And so he was born and grown up in Kyoto, and the family decided that he will become a professor. And the Japanese government sent him to Germany, to Leipzig, to study under Wilhelm Oswald, which is a laureate Nobel Prize winner in chemistry, because he studied chemical reactions, the balance of chemical reactions. And there, that was a very important experience for him, because as you can see in this picture where Professor Kikunekeda is standing up and sitting with all his colleagues from Germany, you can see that his stature is short. So he realized that the body, the complexity of Germans are big and strong, and they were taller. So he felt very strongly that in Japan, Japan was a developing country and the nutrition was not good enough. And he wanted to contribute to the nation in some way. Of course, he was a very good chemist, and he was very well prepared during his time in Germany. And also he had the experience of eating foods that he had never eaten before. So he ate tomatoes and asparagus. And he realized that there was something in the tomato and asparagus, which is actually very genius. It's not something easy to find out by yourself, but he found out that there is something similar to that, to the broth of the seaweed he was used to have in Kyoto when he was a child. Besides that, he also read an article from the first medical doctor in Japan, Hizumi, and the article said that the paper was a food and digestion, and the article said that good taste promotes digestion. And that was a clue for him to realize that if he could make nutritious foods more tasty, probably they would provide more nutrition. It will be easier for digestion, and it provide better nutrition to Japanese. So he thought this could be something he could do, and he would like to contribute to his country doing that. Just to show you, this is a picture of the boiled tofu with dashi stock. This is the inspiration of the type of food he had when he was a child, which it reminded him of the taste of the asparagus and the tomato. So just to put you in context, just to know, to let you know that the soup that you have in this pot is made with these ingredients. So basically, when I talk about soup stock in Japan, it's basically the same as saying dashi. And dashi is a very concentrated soup of umami compounds. Usually you combine the bonito flakes, which is a very traditional food. It's a very dried and fermented bonito mussels that have been dried, and it's probably one of the hardest food that exists right now in the world. And then you have the dry kombu kelp, and you combine them. It takes a long time to produce these two ingredients, but you can actually take the flavor from them very quickly with boiling water. So that's what he did. He realized that if he takes the kelp to find out what would be the umami substances, it would be so complicated because it's so complex, that he thought, I will take the soup and I will analyze the soup to see what is giving this special taste. And he got it. It was a very hard work. He was really a good chemist, and he published the article in Japanese. Recently, we translated it into English, but it shows you all the process that he had to follow, which was really hard, to get 6 grams of the umami substance from 12 grams of kombu to make the soup. And he found out that it was this amino acid called glutamic acid. But I don't know, I suppose not all of you know much about chemistry, but the word acid can actually give you a clue. This doesn't taste umami, this tastes sour basically, because it's an acid, right? So that was not exactly what he was looking for. But after trying to combine the sour glutamic acid with different salts, he tried sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium chloride, many different salts. And he found out that actually the sodium salt was the one that tasted the best. And that was the taste he was looking for. He realized that that's the taste, and he called it umami because in Japanese, umai means delicious. And he thought, well, you know, we can call it umami. It's not exactly umami. It's not a delicious. Deliciousness itself is not a taste, but we can change it later on. But actually, the name of umami stuck with glutamate, and that's how we are using it up to today. And recently we have actually analyzed the amino acid content in this kombu dashi. Here you have a graph where you have all the different amino acids. There are actually 20 different amino acids, and this is the concentration. And you can see I mark in red the typical umami amino acids, which will be aspartic acid and glutamic acid. Now you know that is the salt. But basically there are no other amino acids in this particular broth. So it's very pure umami. It's very easy to detect the taste of this compound. And at that time when Kikunekeda isolated glutamate was already discovered, and it was known already, a known amino acid. It was discovered by Rittenhausen, working in collaboration with the Nobel laureate chemist Emil Fischer. They realized that, and they actually described the structure of glutamic acid, and then they described that the first taste of this amino acid is sour, and then it becomes insipid. So they completely missed the whole umami story. They never detect or never had that particular sensitivity that Kikunekeda had. So they completely ignored that part of the story, and that's where Kikunekeda comes. So to complete the whole story of the umami connection with Japan, we start with Kikunekeda discovering that the umami compound in kelp seaweed was glutamate. Several years later, one disciple from Kikunekeda, Shintaro Kodama, found out that the Katsu Bushi, the dry bonito that is used also to make the dashi, had another compound that also helped to bring up the umami taste of glutamate, but it was a different structure. It was a ribonucleotide. It was not an amino acid. And much later, also in Japan, Akira Kunaka found that there is another nucleotide, but this time he found it from dry shiitake mushrooms, and it has to be dry because the fresh shiitake mushrooms are rich in glutamate, but they don't have guanylate because this compound is easy to destroy if you don't treat the product properly, and this is and you follow the processes that you use for drying. The same thing with inosinate. So here you have now all the compounds that give that special taste of the Japanese broth or the dashi. And so that you can have the glutamate coming from the kelp seaweed, and then you can either combine the kelp seaweed with the bonito or with the dry sardines or with the dry shiitake, and either way you will have dashis that are delicious and have very particular flavors depending on what ingredients you use. And the point is that dashi is not only a broth, it's maybe it also happens in our Western cuisine where we use broths for many, many dishes. So in Japan, they use dashi to make many dishes, not only the miso soup, also simmered daikon, but they also do the simmered vegetables with dashi. Probably you are familiar with the chawanmushi or the tamagoyaki. They all contain dashi to bring up the flavor of those foods. But now I want to explain you one more step up of complexity, and is that there is a special effect or function of combining these compounds. So you might ask me why you need to have glutamate and inosinate at the same time. Well, what we have found out is that once you combine glutamate with inosinate, the intensity of the taste, it's actually exponential. you increase that taste intensity exponentially. And we call that the synergistic effect. And the point is that we found that by doing research, as you can see in the graph in the right side, if you have glutamate from 100% to 0%, and inosinate from 0% to 100%, and you look at the graph representing the umami intensity, you need to have both of them to have the maximum amount or intensity of umami. And we have many different traditional cuisines here. We represented the Japanese one that I already explained, Western cuisine, where you have the combination of many vegetables, onion, carrots, celery with beef, for example. And you see that the beef will be the source of inosinate, and all the vegetables will give us glutamate. And in the Chinese broth, you will have the fresh onions and the gingers and the chicken. So we knew that without knowing the science behind it, that traditionally we have all our culinary cultures have learned that. So we have been using this synergistic effect for many centuries without given to the cultural experience of just experiencing gastronomy over the centuries of all of these gastronomical cultures. But what is very interesting is that that's something that we are now working at the company, is that this is giving umami a very unique property, and it's a very good candidate to use it to reduce salt. As you know, most of our health problems right now are related to that we take too much salt, too much sugar, too much fat. So if we want to reduce salt, but we want to have a good taste, we can use actually umami in the right way to make foods that have lower salt, but are delicious. And that's where it comes, not without compromising taste, right? The concept is that we can have low salt foods without having the bad taste. And this is possible because there are very unique properties about monosodium glutamate, which is the salt that Professor Kikunekeda found, and is that over the intensity and over time, it seemed to increase the thickness, the continuity, the mouthfulness, the mildness. It's a very complex function that is not completely understood yet scientifically. We have receptors. We have found that the receptors are activated by glutamate, and we send this information to the brain, but we don't really know exactly what happens, that we have all these sensations when we get umami. And in fact, the time where Kikunekeda was working with his new umami substance, it was a time where there was a very strong industrial development, and not only in different fields of engineering or construction or any kind of production, but it was also affecting the food industry. And here you have, for example, an extract of meat where you have a concentrated meat. At that time, you can imagine that to have nutritious foods was more difficult, and so that different chemists and medical doctors and different people came up with ideas to improve the nutritious status of the people. Another one was Julius Monkey. He was an entrepreneur. He had his factory, and he tried. The factory workers had very restrict hours of working, so they can only eat in the morning and when they finish. So they had really long working hours. And he made a legume flour that he wanted to provide nutritious food to the workers, but it tasted really bluntly. So what then from there, it was developed the flavor enhancer, the Maggi cubes, with that idea. The problem is, I'm not sure if you realize, but the concept of the initial inspiration of making the Maggi cubes comes from a different food culture, and that's why it's different from the idea that Kikune had. Here you have other products, airbrush, that was actually developed back north. by Theodore Knorr, and also the discovery, the very important development of the discovery of pasteurization that help us to kill the microorganisms that were pathogen or were causing disease. So in this environment of very big development is when Ikeda realized that, well, he extracted the glutamic acid. Here you have the first bottle of the bottle of the first extraction he made of the glutamic acid. And he found, he got in contact with Sabrosuke Suzuki, who was working with iodine at that time. And they made a startup company. He wanted to give up his patent of producing glutamic acid or glutamate, and because he wanted to contribute to society. He wanted to improve the nutrition status of Japanese people. So in a way, for Professor Kikunekeda, it was a little bit of giving up his time and his knowledge of chemistry to society to make something positive or something good for society. And for Sabrosuke, it was a very big challenge because it was a new product that nobody knew and nobody knew how to use. So it was a very big endeavor. And from there, we come to today, where you see we start talking about dashi and we start talking about Japanese food, but in fact, umami substances, glutamate, inosinate, they are part of our daily foods, and we have been using them without knowing maybe that they were rich in umami, but we have been using them to improve the taste of foods and to enjoy them. And so for your knowledge, the Spanish traditional Iberico ham is very, very rich in umami, the same than Parmesan cheese and tomatoes and the fresh mushrooms and the shiitake that are dried, and even the tea. And this is to give you an idea. This is a map that was initially created. This is inspired of a map that created the Umami Information Center, where you have all the different products that are rich in umami, either because they were fermented from legumes or from seafoods. You know that there are still many fish sauces or those that still use tomato heavily in their foods in Europe, in South America, in the United States, everywhere. If you have a chance to take a look to the Umami Information Center page, you will see that they have the mapping. You can see it in detail. So this brought all this long history of Japan with Buddhism and not being able to eat meat, and then the structure of the small dishes has brought little by little to the traditional Japanese diet, the Washoku, which has a very unique properties. One of the properties is that you have several dishes. Usually you have a staple food. It's usually cooked rice. You have a soup, miso soup or any kind of soup, a main dish that usually is a broiled fish or meat. So nowadays there is a very big variety, and then you have side dishes that with vegetables that are. So there is there is various types of foods, and it's a balanced diet. So it's considered to be quite healthy diet. And in fact, you might know that right now Japan holds the longest, the highest longevity in the world right now. So it's a very it's a balanced, healthy diet, rich in vegetables and pescatarian. So as you can see at the end, because of Buddhism and because the strong relationship of Japanese people with the environment, with nature, the Japanese cuisine has a rich variety of ingredients from the sea and from the land. They also are a culture of gratitude. So whenever they eat food, they realize that they are taking a life to eat. They are taking things from nature. So there is always this gesture of itadakimasu I receive with respect. And also there is an enjoyment of the 4 seasons. So every season has different products and ingredients, and they try to eat these products when they are most delicious. So that's when in autumn they use the autumn foods, and in winter the winter foods, and spring the spring foods, and so on. And this is important because this is when the taste of these foods are at the greatest. They usually don't use as much fat. Those of you who are familiar with the Mediterranean diet, or even in Ireland, probably you are used to eat foods that are a little bit heavier, but in Japan, fat is not one of the main, so it's high in carbohydrates in rice and high in protein. And then it's very tied to traditions and family. They celebrate many different key dates during the year of farm that are related to farming, etc. And the basic flavor, or the flavor that it's more distinct in Japanese food is umami. So this is probably one of the most main properties. So what is umami? It's a subtle taste. Actually, when you use too much salt, it can be overpowered and it's not easy to detect umami. That's why umami, to really feel umami, you have to be very soft with other seasonings. It covers the tongue completely. Some people describe it as a tongue touching sensation, and it salivates, so it makes you secrete more saliva. And balances the other taste. That means that it blocks the bitterness and enhances the sweetness of food. So it brings up the best qualities of foods and actually inhibits the bad properties of those foods. Actually, this is something that I thought it would be nice to share with you. And is that food is nature transformed by culture. So they, if you ever experience eating the kaiseki food in Japan, you will see that it's so beautiful. It's not only about the taste itself, but it's the presentation, the order of the dishes, the dishes themselves, the teas, and it's a real experience. So it's really a joy to eat. It's not something that you can ignore. You are involved in the process of eating when you are enjoying this kind of dishes. I wanted to share with you that if you are very interested in umami, the Ajinomoto company has a homepage where you can actually read. We have made very interesting infographics that summarize most of the history and the characteristics of umami. The Umami Information Center is also full of a lot of information and practical information for you to taste umami if you want to make your soups, or you want to taste teas, or even if you want to know the concentration of umami substances of many ingredients. They have a very nice database. I will also would like to introduce you the International Glutamate Information Service. It's also very useful sources to learn about glutamate. How can you use it to reduce salt? Even for the elderly people who use the sensation of taste, we found out that if you are generous with umami, they actually increase the appetite and they can enjoy better their foods and keep their health longer. So it's very important for the elderly to enjoy the food. And also the Ajinomoto Foundation for Dietary Culture, they have a lot of nishikie. So we have collected very, very interesting ukiyo, so that the footprints where the theme of cooking and foods are presented, and so you can see the during the Edo period what kind of things people ate and how they process the foods, etc. And then the Japanese Ministry of Agriculture also has a very interesting page about all related to Washoku and Japanese agriculture and food culture, so that it could be an interesting source for you. And that's all I wanted to say today to all of you. I hope you enjoy and you liked it. And And if you need to contact me, this is my email address. I'll be happy to answer any questions that there might be.
Thank you very much, Anna-san. And fascinating talk. And I got a few questions from the floor. So the first one was from Kashita. And how can we incorporate umami flavor in plant-based meat?
In plant-based meat, if you start from zero, or you can do the recipe by yourself, you can either use ingredients that, for example, I don't know if you are basing your meat from lentils or chickpeas or whatever legume that you may have. Is that depends on what you start from, right? You can use like a shiitake mushrooms, you can use tomatoes, and you can use all these vegetables that are rich in umami to increase the umaminess, let's say. But another way that I personally use it a lot is by using the monosodium glutamate. And with that, I use it directly. And with that, actually, sometimes I don't even need to use salt. And that reduces a lot the amount of sodium you use in your recipe. But it's always about looking, if you don't use cheeses, so then you have to find what are the, look at the databases and which are the most richest, but usually shiitake are the favorite. The shiitake mushrooms, dry shiitake mushrooms are great for this kind of situations, yeah.
Yes, thank you. I miss shiitake mushroom as well.
Yeah.
So, and the next question is from Anne. With the rise of a Western diet, especially hamburgers and similar fast foods, how has this impacted traditional Japanese cuisine and people eating out in Japan?
Yeah, actually, that's one of the reasons I think they tried to push the Washoku into the UNESCO, because it was a tradition that it's been lost over the years, and it happens also with the Mediterranean diet. There is more and more Western diets. The Western diet is actually entering more and more into Japan, so that now most of Japanese people, I think they have breakfast with bread. But for whatever reason, I think because of the food in Japan is very expensive, and because portions are really small, Japanese people don't eat as many calories as Westerners. So they might have a treat of having a hamburger one day, but I don't think it's a culture where you will be eating hamburgers every day. So there is so much variety. So I guess there is a combination of variety and small portions, and that is helping not to have so much obesity and the same chronic dietary problems that are having in Europe and in the United States.
Thank you. And then the question comes from Siafika, a student in food science in Malaysia. Thank you very much. She's asking, in evaluating sensor analysis, how does it differ? How to differ the flavor of umami and saltiness?
It's very simple. Saltiness is very fast. It comes and goes quickly, whereas umami remains for a really long time. And it's if you try, what is the most umami thing I can think of? Is that really the ham, the Iberico ham has a lot of umami. It's very easy to do it with Iberico ham. It's very salty at the beginning. So you will have this saltiness coming to your mouth. And then once the saltiness is gone, the thing that is remaining, and it remains for a long time, is umami, and you will salivate and salivate. So once you experience it once, it's easy to find out after that, looking by yourself.
Okay.
It's a matter of playing. Yeah.
Okay, and then the next question comes. There are two more questions. One from Evan. He's asking about the link between Buddhism and vegetarian food. He heard Japanese monks today are eating meat. Is that true?
I don't know, there might be monks that maybe they eat meat, but there's certainly monks that are living specifically only with vegetables. So what they do is they combine the legumes, so the soybeans to make tofu, to make miso, to make many different, and they also use different cooking methods to change texture. So they are actually very creative and it's amazingly delicious. So they are really good. And I think that umami, well used, I mean, they are skillful. It's something you have to learn, and they are really good cooks. So they know how to do it so that it tastes good. And it's by the use of umami, and because these ingredients it could be very boring if you are having always the same thing, the same way. And
yes.
So.
Okay. This next question is actually a few more. Just trying to go through it. Question from Tomoko-san. Many believe that MSG's umami stimulates the appetite and make people eat more, but your theory is that taking enough umami brings different feeling of satisfaction and calms down the desire to eat more. Can you explain a little bit more about this?
Yeah, so the fact that you find something delicious, you eat more, but you all have experienced that after a certain amount of time, you get tired of it, of having the same taste over and over. So it doesn't mean that because you find something that you like, you will eat more of it. And at the same time, because it satisfies you, you make pleasure, and that's a very important thing when you are eating, is that if you are eating and you are not in tune with what you are eating and it doesn't satisfy you, it doesn't give you pleasure, you can keep eating and eating and you don't get the sensation. Whereas when you have pleasure and you enjoy, there is a moment where you say, okay, I had enough. I like it, I enjoy it, and that's it. And this is one of the roles of umami, to show you it's okay, I'm fine, I ate what I wanted, I enjoyed it was wonderful, and I don't need more, that's it. And whereas foods that are bland, that they don't have enough nutrients or that they don't have enough taste, actually we are looking for that moment of saying enough, it's enough, but we don't find it. So actually we can overeat more with this kind of foods than with really delicious and balanced diets. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And there's one quick question from Elena-san. Does dashi contain iodine?
Does she contain iodine? Maybe, probably, yes. Of course, if you make it from the kelp seaweed, I'm sure it does. I don't know how much, but I don't think it's bad for your health, because there are so many million people taking it every day and they are fine and shouldn't be a problem. Just in case, just in case it's a trade-off.
Thank you so much. I think other people are still writing in, but I think time is unfortunately, time is up. So thank you once again for your fascinating talk. And thank you also for everyone joining us today. So the next talk will be on the 6th of November, and that's information session about opportunities to study and do research in Japan, JET program and JSPS opportunities. And there will be more. So find out more on our website, but also Eventbrite. And we will finish this UCD Japan Fair this year with the plenary talk by Professor Hugo Dobson about post-Abe Japan and leadership. And with Mr. Bill Emmott, formerly of The Economist, acting as respondent. So it should be very interesting. And register and join us then. So thank you, everyone, and have a good weekend and stay safe. どうもありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。